WWE Hell in a Cell is going to take place on Sunday, October 26th. We'll be previewing it in full next week on FTW 237, which will be recorded live on Tuesday, October 21st. Here is the card, officially, and this is as of an hour or so ago. We have Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins in a Hell in a Cell. We've got John Cena versus Randy Orton in a Hell in a Cell. By the way, Benjamin from the Facebook notes that this is going to be the 16th facing of John Cena and Randy Orton this year. Throwing it out there. We're also going to see Brie Bella versus Nikki Bella in a loser becomes the personal assistant of the winner. Sheamus versus The Miz for the U.S. Championship, and Rusev versus The Big Show. Likely additions will be Dolph versus Cesaro for the Intercontinental Championship. Probably going to see Usos versus Gold and Stardust for the Tag Team Championships. But and then you also gotta wonder what's going on with the Wyatts, if they're going to try to bring them in before Hell in a Cell, since they've been really pushing those video packages as of late. So maybe they'll have something to do with it, maybe they won't. And then everything else is pretty much up in the air. So five matches official, one or two likely. So that might be your full card. We'll know more next week for sure. So Nick, anything on this card have you excited?
I'm looking forward to the Ambrose versus Rollins match. Those two work incredibly well together, so anything that they do is going to be quality, I think. I'm also interested in Brie versus Nikki. I just want to see how they work together, given both their improvements over the last year, and the fact that this is not a Hell in a Cell match, right?
Well, it is not in a Hell in a Cell.
Okay. I guess there's still time to make that stipulation, but even without the gimmick, I think these two will put on a decent match. The stipulation, I don't know if that interests me so much, but it's something. And if nothing else, I think the match itself will be good. Beyond that, Sheamus versus Miz should be entertaining, if only for Damien Mizdow's contributions. As far as the other official matches go, Rusev versus Big Show, I have little to no interest in that. And Cena versus Orton for the 16th time this year alone, and I think they said last week that they've faced each other a little less than 100 times in their career. So 16 out of almost 100 matches in the 15 years they've been in this company. That says a lot about where the WWE is creatively right now.
It also says a lot.
Nothing good.
Yeah, it also says a lot that they don't have a real rivalry because of it.
Yeah,
they just seem to always be thrown together.
Yeah, the WWE treats it as, these two guys have been around for a long, long time. They're our two top guys. Let's watch them go at it again, without any real animosity between the two.
I don't know, man. Excitement for me. Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins. This is the match. This is the only match I'm really looking forward to because of how well the story has been. This is the only story that has been done properly, in my opinion. It feels legit. It feels real. It feels like these guys really hate each other, and it's all because of Dean Ambrose. Really, Ambrose is a great wrestler, a great character. He is our generation's Roddy Piper. I think the guy is amazing, and it wouldn't really matter who he's up against as long as it's not John Cena. I mean, even with John Cena, he did well on Raw this week. I think we can agree with that. He's done well with John Cena, but that type of match would always leave a lot of doubt in your head. Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins. It really doesn't matter what happens. in that match. Well, how that match ends, we know it's going to be a great match, and I think that is why I'm looking forward to this pay-per-view, because I want to see what they do next and how you know how Dean will work outside of the normal WWE box to make this match epic, because he can and he probably will. Outside of that, yeah, again, I'm not looking forward to any of this. John Cena versus Orton. We've seen it 15 times, 16 times already this year, 17 times if you include this upcoming Raw. Um, Brie and Nikki, I thought was going to be good, and I was looking forward to it, sort of, up until they added this gimmick or this stipulation where the loser becomes the personal assistant. Because usually you look forward to a match not just because of the match, at least for me, but it's not just because of the match, but it's where they're going next with the story. And I don't want to see where they're going next with the story if this is it.
And it certainly doesn't help the fact that Brie pinned Nikki this week, and commentary hyped that up. She finally pinned her sister, and now what?
Yeah. Now, Sheamus versus Miz, and the assumption that we're also going to get Dolph versus Cesaro. I really can't get into either of these matches because I am tired of seeing these two mid card titles specifically switch out every other month. You know, we saw Cesaro versus Sheamus, which I thought was a quality story and a quality match. And as soon as that was over, they moved they moved Cesaro to the Intercontinental Championship. On the flip side, Miz versus Dolph, I thought the story that they were doing was good, especially with Damien Mizdow. I thought, overall, I was enjoying what they're doing, and then they flipped it. And that's a common occurrence that happens pretty much every few months. Who's ever going for the U.S. Championship, if he doesn't win, he goes for the Intercontinental Championship the next month. And that sucks. That is bad storytelling. That is bad writing. Especially, we look at the U.S. Championship as being third, with Intercontinental Championship being second. So if Cesaro can't beat Sheamus, why is he automatically the number one contender for the Intercontinental Championship? I don't get it. It's bad storytelling. I'm sure the match will be great as far as a wrestling match goes, but they don't have a good enough story to really carry it.
Yeah, and I saw this point made in the G Plus community. Landon G specifically brought it up. Is the fact that Orton faced Ziggler this past week on Raw, and Ziggler was beaten cleanly, and then he was brutalized post-match. For all intents and purposes, this is your top champion in the company right now, because Brock's nowhere to be seen, and the rumor is that he won't be back till next year.
Right.
If nothing else, if for no other reason, then your next top champ by default should be treated with a little more care. And the WWE hasn't cared about the mid-card titles for donkey's years, but we're no longer operating under the same circumstances that we were before, where you've got a WWE champion, you've got a World Heavyweight champion. Oh, those other smaller titles, we don't have to push those as hard. Now the World Heavyweight Championship no longer exists. The WWE Heavyweight Champion is nowhere to be found. So if you're going to have gold in the company, it needs to be pushed right now.
Yeah.
And it needs to be handled with care. And the fact that they're just operating as business as usual, we can just job them out to the guys that have been here forever. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, and Ricky Spanish in the Facebook group, he wanted us to talk this week about the entire mid-card title situation. And I just looked at Raw specifically. This week on Raw, we saw Dean Ambrose and John Cena defeat both the tag team champions and the number one contenders for the tag team championship in a 10-minute match pretty easily. Okay, we also saw Miz defeat Sheamus. We saw Randy Orton defeat Dolph Ziggler. So three matches, three of the mid card titles. Generally look at all three of those as mid card titles, and the champions looked bad every single match. Like the only difference, like the only title that looked halfway decent was AJ, and the fact that she almost that she single handedly beat Paige and Alicia Fox in a tag team match. But outside of that, yeah, I don't get what WWE is doing. It's not just who they're pushing for those titles, because I think honestly, Sheamus versus Cesaro or Cesaro versus Dolph, that has potential to be really good, and it's going to be a good match. The same thing with Miz versus Dolph or Miz versus Sheamus. You still have a good program there potentially, but it's just their inability to do it. And I don't know how. I don't know how WWE fails at this. I'm sorry, not just that they failed at it, but that they failed at it for so long. Why? How did they not see these titles as important, wins and losses even?
Yeah, the general apathy surrounding it by creative, by the leadership is good. It's a huge mystery, and it really shouldn't be.
Yeah. So, Rick Spanish, you wanted us to talk about the mid-card titles, and overall, it's disappointment. That's the feeling. The feeling is disappointment because they've got good enough players in those spots, and they're mistreating them, and they're not giving them that opportunity. We talked about this when we talked about Ethan Carter. Ethan Carter, and I totally blank on what his name was in WWE now because it doesn't matter. The thing was like he was given a limited window of opportunity to really show what he could do, and that's exactly what we get in WWE for everyone, and it's a shame. It is a shame. And once they get the reins, off of them and allow them to work on the mic and work the crowd and really perfect their craft in the ring, like Ethan Carter has been given that opportunity in TNA. That's what needs to happen, and for some reason WWE won't let it. Whatevs. All right, so you briefly mentioned the fact that Brock Lesnar. Actually, before we get into that, let's do one more note about Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell right now, and I think this is the first time I can ever remember there being a pay-per-view poster with a guy, in this case Dean Ambrose, on the poster and potentially in the main event of the same event. I think that's the first time I can remember that ever happening, or at least in the last couple of years. I believe Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins belongs as your Hell in a Cell main event. I think a lot of fans feel that way as well. Jared Perez in the Facebook group, though, thinks that WWE is going to give us what we don't want, which is John Cena versus Randy Orton as your main event. So, Nick, what do you think is going to be the main event?
Sadly, I'm leaning towards Cena versus Orton because when Orton demanded the loser of Cena versus Ambrose, he said that either way, he wanted to face that guy in the main event. And Triple H said, okay, sounds good. And I don't know if they'll change that, but I have a really bad feeling that they won't.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm with you. I'm with the sentiment. I understand where you guys are coming from. Most likely, we will get John Cena versus Randy Orton in the main event, but I don't get it logically why it would happen. They have put so much effort into making Dean Ambrose the star, and they have put so much effort into telling this great story between Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins that if they didn't put them in the main event as your top story, they're really shooting themselves in the foot. Not just in our perspective, but just in the general grand scheme of things. They are incredibly dumb. Honestly, they're incredibly dumb if they don't do this. If they don't allow Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins to get the spotlight that they've earned and that they've already given them. It seems dumb for them just to pull that out from underneath them.
So. Yep, no argument there.